Hi, welcome to our second literacy video of the week. So today we are going to be writing a character description about a boy that we are very familiar with. I wonder if any of you can remember Charlie Bucket from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now I am going to read a little part of the story just to remind you about who he is and who his family is. These two very old people are the father and mother of Mr. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine. And these two very old people are the father and mother of Mrs. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina. This is Mr. Bucket. This is Mrs. Bucket. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket have a small boy whose name is Charlie Bucket. This is Charlie. The whole of this family, the 6 grown-ups, count them, and little Charlie Bucket lived together in a small wooden house on the edge of a great town. The house wasn't nearly large enough for so many people, and life was extremely uncomfortable for them all. There were only 2 rooms in the place altogether, and there was only one bed. The bed was given to the 4 old grandparents because they were so old and tired. They were so tired they never got out of it. Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine on this side, Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina on this side. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and little Charlie Bucket slept in the other room upon mattresses on the floor. In the summertime this wasn't too bad, but in the winter freezing cold drafts blew across the floor all night long, and it was awful. There wasn't any question of them being able to buy a better house, or even one more bed to sleep in. They were far too poor for that. There wasn't even enough money to buy proper food for them all. The only meals they could afford were bread and margarine for breakfast, boiled potatoes and cabbage for lunch, and cabbage soup for supper. Sundays were a bit better. They all looked forward to Sundays, because then, although they had exactly the same, everyone was allowed a second helping. The Buckets, of course, didn't starve. For every one of them, the 2 old grandfathers, the 2 old grandmothers, Charlie's father, Charlie's mother, and especially little Charlie himself, went about from morning till night with a horrible empty feeling in their tummies. Charlie felt it worst of all, and although his father and mother often went without their own share of lunch or supper so that they could give it to him, it still wasn't nearly enough for a growing boy. He desperately wanted something more filling and satisfying than cabbage and cabbage soup. The one thing he longed for more than anything else was chocolate. Walking to school in the mornings, Charlie could see great slabs of chocolate piled up high in the shop windows, and he would stop and stare and press his nose against the glass, his mouth watering like mad. Many times a day he would see other children taking bars of creamy chocolate out of their pockets and munching them greedily, and that, of course, was pure torture. In the town itself, actually within sight of the house in which Charlie lived, there was an enormous chocolate factory. Just imagine that. And it wasn't simply an ordinary, enormous chocolate factory either. It was the largest and most famous in the whole world. It was Wonka's factory, owned by a man called Mr. Willy Wonka, the greatest inventor and maker of all chocolates that there has ever been. And what a tremendous, marvellous place it was. It had huge iron gates leading into it, and a high wall surrounding it, and smoke belching from its chimneys, and strange whizzing sounds coming from deep inside it. And outside the walls, for half a mile around in every direction, the air was scented with the heavy, rich smell of melting chocolate. Twice a day on his way to and from school, little Charlie Bucket had to walk right past the gates of the factory, and every time he went by he would begin to walk very, very slowly, and he would hold his nose high in the air and take long, deep sniffs of the gorgeous chocolatey smell all around him. Oh, how he loved that smell, and oh, how he wished he could go inside the factory to see what it was like. Okay, so I hope that's reminded you a little bit about who Charlie is and who his family is. So I want you to think about everything you know about Charlie Bucket and add it to the grid in your pack. Now there is space for you to write about his appearance, so have a think about what he looks like. Now there's a picture in the pack for you, and you can have a think about some of the clips from the film that we have watched as well. There's also space for you to write about his personality, so what kind of a person is he? What is he like? Then you need to think about his likes, so what does Charlie really, really like? And also about his dislikes, what doesn't he like that much? Okay, so pause the video now, fill that grid in and then come back. Okay, so let's have a think about some of our ideas. So if you've not got some of these ideas that I'm going to reveal on here now, you can add them to your grid. So Charlie's appearance, I've put that he's got blonde hair, he's quite skinny because we know he doesn't really get enough food to eat, and he also wears quite shabby clothes. So if you've not got any of those, add them to your grid. So his personality, what is Charlie like? He's very polite, he's very respectful, caring and kind-hearted. Although Charlie doesn't have much in life, he is still a very, very nice person. Now let's move on to his likes. What does Charlie like? Now one I've put here is chocolate because we know that Charlie loves chocolate. I've also got his family, and we also know that he really likes Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka inspires Charlie. He wants to be just like him. Now dislikes, I found this one a little bit trickier to think of, but I did come up with rude people. He doesn't really like rude people. Some of the children in the factory are quite rude. And he also doesn't like the cold weather very much because he never has the right clothes. So if you've not got any of these ideas, you can add them to your grid. Now, okay, so you're going to use all of these ideas to write your character description about Charlie, and each section on the grid is going to be a different paragraph. So here's my example of the paragraph about his appearance. So let's have a read of it together. Charlie Bucket is a young boy who comes from a poor family. He has thin blonde hair and wears shabby clothes. In the winter, he is almost always cold because his family can't afford to buy him warm clothes. But no matter what, Charlie always tries to have a smile on his face. Okay, so I've spoken about those things in my box. So now it is your turn. You can use the word bank that's in your pack and all of your ideas from the grid to write your character description about Charlie Bucket. Don't forget to send them to me. I would love to read some of them, and I will see you later.